Good morning, everyone. We've still got Councillor Byatt is probably stuck on the A12 in our perennial traffic problem, so I expect he should be along shortly. So, welcome to this meeting of the Education and Children's Services Scrutiny Committee. I am Councillor Keith Robinson. I'll be chairing today's meeting. The meeting is being broadcast live and is available to watch on the Council's website whilst we are in public session. A recording will also be available for viewing following the meeting. Members of the public and press may also record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded, provided due courtesy and respect are shown to others in attendance in line with the Council's published guidance. Please ensure you use your microphone, which has been set up for you. Can I also remind you to speak directly into the microphone, and please avoid putting anything such as IT equipment or papers in front of the microphone, as this will affect sound quality. Please could you also ensure that your phones and laptops have been switched to off or silent. We are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the chamber following the fire exit signs at the rear of the chamber. Fire evacuation instructions can also be found on page 4 of the agenda. Before we commence with today's buildings, I would like to welcome Councillor Ruth Leach to the committee. Councillor Leach has replaced Councillor Penny Otten, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Councillor Otten for her valuable contributions to the work of this committee in the past. Agenda item 1, there is no public questions today. We move on to apologies for absence and substitutions.
We have received apologies for absence from Councillor Joanna Spicer, who is being substituted by Councillor David Goldsmith, Councillor Joe Mason, who is being substituted by Councillor Michael Ladd, Councillor Ryan Harvey, who is being substituted by Councillor Jessica Fleming, and also Kate Pereira, co-opted member.
Thank you very much. Can I ask the committee if there are any declarations of interest or dispensations, please? Ashley?
I'd just like to say at this point that I also sit on the corporate parenting board.
Okay, just so noted. Yeah. All right then, thank you. Have you all had a chance to look at the minutes, I take it? Are you happy with the minutes? Or? Okay, so we'll approve the minutes by affirmation if it's okay with you. I don't see anybody shouting no, so. Agenda item 5. The objective of this item is to consider what actions the local authority is taking to address the areas of improvements identified in the RLEX 2024 inspection in relation to care leavers, meet its statutory obligations to ensure care leavers understand their entitlements and ensure the provisions and support in place are meeting the needs of all Suffolk's care leavers and has a positive impact on their lived experiences and progress. The key areas of investigation for today are shown on pages 15 and 16 of the agenda pack. Prior to today's meeting, the Vice Chairman, Councillor Lever, visited the leaving care team in Ipswich to gain a greater understanding of the work. Please can I thank those that set aside time and for being welcoming, informative and providing valuable insight into the work of the service area. Can I now welcome the panel today? Please, I can ask you all in turn to introduce yourselves and your role, please. We'll start at this end. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Jane Smedmore. I'm the Executive Director for Children and Young People Services here at the Council.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bobby Bennett. I'm the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hayley Griffin. I'm a Service Director in Social Care for Children's.
Good morning, everybody. Sharon Muldoon, Interim Service Director for Education, Skills and Learning.
Morning, everybody. I'm Andrew Borwick-Fox, Assistant Director for Corporate Parenting. Good morning, everyone. Matthew Cook, Virtual School Head.
Good morning, everybody. Julia Granger, Assistant Director, Education and Learning.
Well, thank you all for coming today. I'll invite Councillor Bobby Bennett to do her introductory speech.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really pleased to be in front of you today, and I hope you've had time to really read through the papers. When Ofsted visited to do the inspection, the ILACS inspection in June 24, they identified 3 areas for improvement, which we've set out through the paper about the enormous amount of work that's gone on to address those. And I'm really proud of the work that's gone on in this space. Those 3 areas were the quality and consistency of pathway planning for care leavers, ensuring that care leavers understand their entitlement of what we call the local offer, the local care leaver offer. And the third one is the assessment and accessibility of support for care leavers 21. We have a duty to look after care leavers until they're 25, but actually we are very, very proud that if you've been a child in care in Suffolk, that we will do everything we can to stay in touch and support us as long as they need it. We also identified an additional area of improvement, which was the experience of care leavers living in unsuitable accommodation. And I'm sure you'll have questions about this, and it's a really important area of the work that the team have been doing. I'm really pleased that Councillor Lever has been able to meet with the Leaving Care team. We were also at a fantastic event last month before, where we spent an evening with some of our care leavers, talking to them, understanding their challenges and making pizza at the same time. And with the refresh of the Corporate Parenting Board, which a lot of this work sits under, hoping to do many more things like that, making sure that it's a conversation between us and our children in care and our care leavers. So I don't want to do much talking. I want to be able to give you the opportunity to ask questions. I know we're very ably supported by Sarah Jane, by Hayley and by Andrew, who's been driving much of this work, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what your questions are and some good recommendations, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just mention that I'm glad that Councillor Byatt managed to beat the traffic in the end. Sarah Jane, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bennett. Just to go on from there, before you hear from the team, just to give some context around the work that we do. So our service is there to provide support, advice and assistance to young people who are due to leave care or are care leavers. And just as Councillor Bennett said, we have a duty to support young people up to the age of 25. We take very seriously that we're a family, and families don't just say at 25, sorry, we can't help you anymore. So our care leavers will always come back to us. We are their family, and we will make sure, however old they are, that we can support and guide in that way, just as Councillor Bennett has said. Our core purpose is to make sure that alongside of our young people, just as all parents do, that we support planning for the future, and there's a smooth transition to adulthood, and that includes everything from emotional health and well-being, support, financial information, guidance around education, employment, all of the things that you would anticipate good parents to do. And you'll hear much more about that as we go on. We make sure, and what's really important to us is we try our hardest to make and maintain relationships. So you're going to hear about what we do pre-18 as well, and that's just as important. And that stability of relationships going into adulthood is really crucial, and the team will be able to talk to you more about that. What's really important, we spent a lot of time just making sure that we really know our young people and that they know us, so hopefully that will come through to you in the conversations today as well. And that all of our care leavers, we have a responsibility to ensure they have a pathway plan, and that's the mechanism that ensures that we think about all of those important things that I've just spoken to you about. So just to give you some context, the Leaving Care Service has 16 social workers within it, and that includes the team managers and the consultant social workers. There are 24 personal advisors, so you can hear a bit more about the work that all of these people do. And one of our personal advisors works county-wide in partnership with both the Leaving Care Service and the Children with Disabilities team, really thinking about that transition post-18. And in addition, the Leaving Care Service is supported by a housing development transition lead. And when you ask questions, particularly just as Councillor Bennett highlighted, around young people in unsuitable accommodation, you'll see that our relationship across districts and boroughs and the County Council is just very important and really crystallised in the work the team do. So we currently just have over 1,200 care leavers within our family here in Suffolk. That excludes all young people under 18, so that's just young people aged 18 to 25. There are currently 516 young people who are aged between 18 and 21. Then after 21, Andrew will use the words for this, but we stay in touch as much as we can with young people, and as much as they want us to, between 21 and 25. 129 young people or adults are actively being supported in that way, but all of our young people are regularly contacted. Even if they don't want our support, we just remind them we're always here. So it's that stepping back, but we're always available. So just to give you some context, I make no apology for the fact that there's so many of us here, because we are parents, and what's really important is each of us brings something slightly different to all of those things that I talked about: health, well-being, support, financial advice, employment and training, and that's why we're collectively caring for our children in that way. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Is there any other officers like to put forward at this time? Please do.
Okay, if it's okay, Chair, I'm not going to take people through the report, but I would just like to introduce it, if that's okay, with a brief summary. It demonstrates, are people getting feedback, or is that just me? A little bit. I'll keep going. If it becomes an issue, just say. So the report demonstrates the culmination of a significant amount of improvement work over the last 18 months. It follows the feedback from the external lens of Ofsted and the MHCLG, that's also been led by and driven by our own assessment of where our strengths lie and what needs to improve. Most importantly, our own care leavers were telling us through feedback and their outcomes from our care that things needed to change. The starting point was a difficult one, and the challenges pointed to the need for strategic change, looking at partnerships, structures, and the governance supporting the work. Workforce improvement, how we invest in staffing and development, and also changes to practice and our practice standards. The report outlines how these issues have been identified and responded to, and highlights the impact of the investment that we've received and our obsession across the department, the wider organisation and the corporate parenting partnership to improve the outcomes for care leavers. We can be cautiously optimistic that we've made headway on the key issues. Pathway planning is improving, and quality and consistency. We support and improve the lives of more of our 21-year-olds, including the most vulnerable, and are in touch with the vast majority of our care leavers. Our offer and the understanding of this amongst our care leavers is improving. More care leavers live in suitable accommodation, and fewer are finding themselves having interactions with the homelessness systems, even in areas of higher pressure within the county. Feedback from our care leavers from a range of sources tells us that their experiences of our services, support, and the care that we provide them is also improving. However, we know that we've got much further to go in order to achieve the improvements we want to their lives and the experiences of our care leavers. The report has highlighted that this is particularly pertinent in terms of the number of our care leavers in education, employment and training, the quality of their transitions through our system, so those that move from being in care to leaving care, those going from the tricky transition from childhood to adulthood, and also children with significant additional needs who require support from partners in adult social care as they become adults. We know we need to work and continue to work on improving those transitions. We also have further work to do to achieve the consistency in practice we need across the county, and to continue focusing on what we would call the basics. We feel that the reshaping of our corporate parenting board the broader transformation within the department, including the move towards the Suffolk Cares model of support, and the continued support from stakeholders and partners from education, health, districts and borough councils and others, stand us in good stead to move in the right direction. We see this as the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end, and it's really important that moving forward we continue to focus and continue to obsess about improving services for care leavers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, well, at this point, if everybody's happy, I'll open up for questions. David.
Yes, on page 29, paragraph 18, it says there that young people post 21 by increasing keep in touch contact 1 to 3 times a year. Can you tell me how you arrived at that number?
I think we looked at what local authorities around us were doing and what the basic expectation is of local authorities, and that is annually. And we asked ourselves whether we felt that that was good enough, whether that was right, and also whether the information we had about the experiences of care leavers, particularly those who were not connected to our service, was telling us that we were doing as much as we needed to do. The answer to that was that we weren't, and so we had to look at what was involved, because I think, as Sarah Jane has highlighted, there's a large number of care leavers within Suffolk, and so that's a lot of calls to make, that's a lot of letters to send, that's a lot of texts to get out there, and it's also, at times, it's knocking on doors. We think that for the majority of our young people, 3 times a year is more appropriate, and it means that we are showing that we're holding young people in mind, even when we're not working with them. We're doing what we can reasonably do to get a good understanding of their welfare and their well-being and what they need, at the same time as respecting that they don't necessarily want, not every single young person wants us calling them every week, every month, every 2 months. And so it felt that it struck the right balance between going as far as we felt was right and making sure that we were respecting our young people's rights to live their lives.
Bobby?
Can I just add to that before you do? And that's just a case of the team proactively reaching out. That's not a cap. Clearly, if a young person needs more support or contacts us, there's no limit to the number of sort of times that they'll be in touch. But that is the number of times that our teams will be proactively reaching out. And some of them may not, want to hear from us, but that's the commitment that the team have made.
I'm very pleased about that. Yeah. Any other questions? Jessica?
Thank you very much. I just had a few numeric questions to start off with. Well, my first question actually was the total number of care leavers we're dealing with, and eventually I did find it, but it took a bit of digging because it didn't come in until page 39 in the papers, because a lot of the information up front is percentages, and if you don't know sort of the scale of what you're looking at, the percentages aren't always very useful. So I think in future it'd be useful to have a table right at the beginning, showing how many care leavers and what their age spread is, so that when we read the paper, we have that in our minds. Also, I just wanted to confirm that the age when young people are eligible to have a personal advisor is age 18 to 20, but are they eligible after 20? How does that work?
So legislation changed a few years ago, and so care leavers now are eligible to have a personal advisor up until the age of 25. They are required, if they are what's known as a former relevant care leaver, so have specific care leaver entitlement, which is the vast majority of our care leavers, they are required required to have a personal advisor up until the age of 21. Beyond the age of 21, it is, well, the approach we take is to assess based on their need, what they would like, and what we think is right for them, and we make decisions around whether we continue to provide a personal advisor or not. I think in the report what you see is there's been a shift in how we approach that, and we now offer a personal advisor and that level of support to more of our care leavers who are beyond 21 than we have done previously, and that's one of the important changes alongside how we approach our work with 21-year-olds that has made a difference in the last 18 months or so.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up, given that, is the apparent shortage of personal advisors a major issue, or is it something that, you've got in hand?
It's something that we've got in hand. So coming into this, one of the challenges was the amount of personal advisors we were resourced for. We've really welcomed additional investment, which has allowed us to recruit more personal advisors in Suffolk. Some of what is outlined within the report and some of the challenges on the ground has been recruiting what was a third increase in our workforce of personal advisors over the course of that year. Getting the people right, getting people trained, and also filling vacancies that were arising as people moved on from their roles. And so in order to achieve the resourcing that we were provided, it's taken some time, energy and focus to get to that point. But as we speak today, we're in a good position in terms of the resourcing. I'd direct everyone to the caseloads and the improvements that we've made in the caseloads of individual personal advisors to highlight that they have manageable workloads now, which is something that we identified they didn't always have before, and they're able to do the work that we want them to do with more of our care leavers than before too.
And just one final question, if you could bear with me. Is there a valid statistical link between young people leaving care and access to personal advisors? I mean, how helpful are they? I realise some people leaving care may not need personal advisors at all, but is there a demonstration of the success of the personal advisors for those who use them versus those who, for whatever reason, don't?
In a roundabout way. So I would say the evidence base is of the poor outcomes for care leavers and the impact of services being withdrawn and services being withdrawn too quickly, which influenced the legislative and practice changes nationally. So previously, pre-2017, I think it was, personal advisors would only be allocated up to 21. That change in extending to 25 recognised that for a large number of care leavers, they weren't ready, and the impact in terms of outcomes was really, really significant. And we know that in terms of their education, employment, training outcomes, but also overrepresentation within prison population, health outcomes and other indicators. So broadly, the indication is that the support hasn't been sufficient over the years for children and young adults leaving the care system. In terms of the impact of additional personal advisors or receiving the benefit of personal advisors, I think if we looked locally to the feedback we have from young people about the help they get, and the more time that we afford our personal advisors to spend with our young people, the improved feedback we've received overall, but also in terms of the comments and the qualitative impact that they're telling us, we see personal advisors as a crucial role in really just trying to smooth that really difficult transition into adulthood.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Comprehensive answer. Camilla.
Thank you. Firstly, just to say this is a really positive report. It was a real pleasure to read it, and it sounds like there's a lot of positive things that have happened. It was my first committee when we looked at this the first time around, so it's really great to see that journey. I just wanted to ask a bit more about the personal advisor recruitment. Is turnover of staff still an ongoing concern for you? Do you have confidence in the stability of that team now going forward into the next phase? And are those personal advisors, are the staff feeding back that they feel able to do their job effectively?
Thank you. At the offset, when the staff numbers were lower and we'd recognised the need to do things differently was acute. The retention challenge was there, so personal advisors had higher workloads. That was an impact, I think, on retention. I think given the investment we've given, both in terms of the number of staff, which has impacted on workloads, and the training that we're providing personal advisors and the support we're providing personal advisors, I feel we're in a really positive space in terms of retention at the moment, and that's why we've got either all or certainly the vast majority of our posts filled, including the additional capacity provided. We've got our additional disability specialist personal advisor, which was a huge gain for us in terms of our ability to work with that particular group of young people. So I think we recognise it from the improvement in retention. I think in terms of feedback from staff, they have, so in conversations, and I think it's a good point in terms of perhaps us understanding more about their experiences now, but the feedback on the ground, both from the teams, from conversations I have, is they feel they've got the time to do the increased quality work that we're asking of them by increasing standards in the service and in what we do. And so, you know, staff, both in terms of the long-standing members of staff who have been through the journey with us, but also new staff, are reporting positively on their experiences of working for Suffolk, which is really important, because in amongst this improvement work, a lot has been asked of staff, and so to see we're coming through that, and for them to feel the benefit of the investment, the improvement work, and the change in terms of the work they do is really important. Another thing I'd say is that one of the things that staff have said to me is, because we've changed the way we work with 21-year-olds, they feel they can do the work in the way they want to. Didn't feel right for them that we weren't working with some of the young people over 21 that we should or wanted to have done, and so they feel able to do the job that they want to do now, which is something to be proud of, I think.
Bobby?
I just wanted to add a little reflection of my own, in that having talked to some of our personal advisors and seen the work they do, sort of advocating in the strongest way for the care leave, it's such an important role. And when you think of the complexities of adult life for anyone coming into it, but for someone who has maybe less support than others, that role is so crucial. And what we're actually seeing is some of our personal advisors are care leavers themselves, and they bring some very sort of personal lived experience and passion to the role. So it's a hugely important role, and I'm really pleased the committee is shining a bit of a light on it right now.
Thank you. Have with that, Camilla? Peter?
Thank you, and Chair. First of all, my apologies for my late arrival, and I didn't have the opportunity to declare my usual interest with my wife working for the family practitioner support team, although I don't think she's directly involved in any of these families. So just a couple of things. Andrew, you were talking about unsuitable accommodation, and I noted in the notes that it was a lot of that is care leavers in custody, but what other care leavers does it refer to? Thank you. That's the first one. Thank you.
So, unsuitable accommodation is a technical term. So it's a term set out by the DfE, and we have to report to the DfE on the numbers of our care leavers in suitable accommodation or unsuitable accommodation. There's a small level of subjectivity to it, but there's also very specific groups or types of accommodation that a care leaver could be living in, which would be determined as unsuitable. One of them is in custody, and so if a care leaver is in custody, then we would be determining and reporting that they're in unsuitable accommodation. If they are living in temporary accommodation, so if they're in if they have a homelessness application and a housing department has placed them in a temporary accommodation setting, we would determine that as unsuitable accommodation, and that's really important to us, particularly given the focus we've got on reducing homelessness of care leavers. But it can also include young people living in unstable arrangements, so it might be someone who's sofa surfing or who has quite a difficult and unstable life, and we're trying to work out where they're living. If they don't have a fixed abode, a place they can call home and address, we would also determine that as unsuitable accommodation. I hope that answers the question.
Till I exhaust them. I should have said, to echo what Camilla said, this is an absolutely brilliant report. It's really drilled down into the issues, you know, and when we go back, when I think back to, I can't remember how many meetings ago, but we talked about, you know, when did we stop being corporate parents, you know, as an authority, judging by the age, as it's going up to 25, we're going to be corporate grandparents. So, however, you know, yeah, I think we probably already are. Anyway, it was following on from what you just said about accommodation. Do we as an authority, for our care leavers, have any weight with finding them accommodation if they're looking for council housing or any supported housing elsewhere? Can we intervene on their behalf as care leavers? Thank you.
Andrew will give you a much more fuller answer and explain the work we do, but one of the big things that we've been doing since ILACS is working much closely with our partners. So we went to the Housing Board, we've talked to I think it's three of our district and boroughs, particularly around corporate parenting responsibility, and doing that on a political level as well as an officer level to make sure that everyone really understands the importance. But Andrew, I think, can talk a bit more about the technicalities when it comes to housing.
So there's a mixture of statutory entitlement and partnership work that contributes to how we navigate through the housing system for care leavers. So there is a basis within some of the legislation and guidance around care leavers being determined as a priority need group, and so that means they can access certain rights to housing and to support from housing departments, and we as a department and as corporate parents would always make sure we advocate for them in that area. However, the other part is the strategic partnerships we have with our district and borough councils, their housing departments, and through the Housing Action Group and the Suffolk Housing Board, which is about how we work together to make sure that we have the right pathways, that we have the right systems of supported accommodation and move on through supported accommodation for care leavers into tenancies, and that where it's right to do so, the right support is provided to make sure that care leavers can access tenancies. There's things that we've done that we've recognised we need to do as a county council, and so the rent guarantor scheme's been a really important part of making sure that care leavers can access rent guarantors if they need to, so that they have access to other parts of the housing market that often in society people rely on bank of mum and dad to support or underwrite with. We also work really closely with district and borough councils on ensuring that care leavers have access to rent and deposit arrangements where they need to. Now those are both examples of accessing aspects of the private market, but we do also work really closely with district and borough councils to make sure that that we have good access to tenancies for our care leavers. And I think we've evidenced some of the progress in the numbers of our care leavers reducing in temporary accommodation, and that's what's impacted in the improvement in the or the reduction in the number in unsuitable accommodation. What that tells us is that those partnerships have meant that some care leavers who, for different reasons, were in temporary accommodation have been able to move on, and we know have accessed tenancies through the relevant local authorities, and so it's a mixture of partnership working and having their rights underwritten within legislation and guidance that supports care leavers in the housing space.
This is really about the virtual school. I don't know whether Matthew can answer. In here you talk about providing leave us with this £200 voucher towards clothing and things, and also travel costs. I just wondered, in terms of the travel costs, how long does that go on? In other words, does it help them when they've got into a job over a period of time, or is it a one-off thing to get to interviews and things like that? Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It comes from a fairly recent government initiative that extends the Pupil Premium Plus grant that's available for statutory school-aged children to children and young people who are of a college age, so 17, 18, Year 12 and Year 13. And from that, we're able to put in place, it's a short-term funding for those that might find themselves in a difficult situation as they make the transition from not being in employment to being in employment. It can cause a difficulty, a hiatus between funding streams, and so it makes employment always attractive. So that it could be about work equipment, it could be about transport, it could be about interview skills. There's a whole range of things that it can afford. It's proving very successful. It comes alongside a range of measures that we use to support young people from that position of not being employed to being employed. The most, I think, potent of those is the Education Employment Training Panel, and having that funding linked to a panel of experts and partners has been really successful. We've had 55 young people who've been presented at that panel since September, and 26 of them have been in employment or educational training within 3 months of that. And they are presented with difficulties. We're not cherry-picking young people who are easy to move in. We are going after those that we have really struggled to find an offer for, and that's proving to be very successful. So that, along with that funding, makes a big difference.
It's been a bit remiss. I believe Michael had a question. Did you not?
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose I come this with a fresh pair of eyes, really. So it was interesting to read the papers and the report, and it seems clear to me that there is pretty good progress being made, I think, on this subject. But my question is, it's on 46 on page 33. We talked a lot this morning about the personal advisors, and this is about the personal advisor development programme. And my question is that programme evaluated against the original objectives? And if so, have there been any changes as a result of that evaluation and feedback to the new programme which is running this year?
So it's been, so the programme has been quite an iterative process, and so as the sessions have been developed, they've been developed based on practice need. It's been a very dynamic service over the last 18 months or so, and so a lot of what's happened has been about thinking about the issues, thinking on our feet, providing the support and moving through it. I think where we are now is that we want to make sure that we understand what the progress is in the sessions that we've had, where it's worked, where we need to tweak it, because we've got, I think as we talked about with the recruitment, we've got a lot of new personal advisors, and we recognise that some of those personal advisors won't have attended all the sessions that were offered. So I think the next steps for us are really working alongside what's going to be the learning and development colleagues to really think about how we can formalise some more of the personal advisor development programme and use their advice and skills to really build on what we've done so far. So I think it's a good point, and I think it's something that we want to do to take forward, because we feel confident that we've provided some really good support. We feel we've had good feedback from personal advisors about their experiences of the sessions and the relevance of that to their work particularly. And so I think that's something for us now to take forward, yes.
So you were saying it's a continuously evolving programme, I suppose, is it? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. James, I believe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And unlike Michael, I don't come to this as a fresh pair of eyes. I come with an old pair of eyes, and but that doesn't mean that this report is not excellent and that gives us a lot of information, and thank you for it. Before I come on to my own personal question, just following up some of the other questions. When we talk about, or you talk about, that a prison is not a suitable place of accommodation, I'm sure we'd all agree with that. What does the local authority and what powers do they have to influence and support that young person whilst they're there, other than they're not in a suitable accommodation?
Thank you. So I guess we look at it two ways. So we have a responsibility or a duty to care to them as care leavers, but also we're their corporate parents. And so when we think about and approach the work with young people who are in custody, one of the things we're thinking about is what's the right thing to do as a parent. And so within our local offer and what we offer to care leavers who are in custody, we make sure that they're visited, we make sure that they are connected with the right support within custody. Colleagues in education have an eye on whether they're accessing employment, educational work within the custody setting too. But we also make sure that they've got access to money as well, because it's important for care leavers to be able to what we recognise is that some of our young people will have support from family when they're in custody, but some won't, and we need to make sure that there's no one who's not been visited, not been thought about, and not been held in mind at a point when they're very, very vulnerable. In terms of our responsibilities, we have a responsibility to make sure that they have a good plan for when they come out of custody. So that is thinking about where are they going to live, what can we do to reduce the likelihood of reoffending, whether that's through identifying education or work opportunities, training, or other things, and also making sure that when in custody and outside of custody, we're doing what we can to advocate for them to access health and mental health support as well, because as everyone is probably aware, people with mental health difficulties are disproportionately represented within the custody numbers alongside care experienced people, and so making sure that they get the right access to help and support is important. We work closely with our colleagues from the Youth Justice Service, particularly where that entrance to custody has happened either before or around their 18th birthday, but we also have good partnerships through them with colleagues from the police and probation services. Alongside those partnerships we spoke about with our colleagues in district and borough councils to make sure that we get those plans right for resettlement for care leavers. So there is a lot that is required when care leavers are in custody, and it's really important to us, whether they're at HMP Norwich or one of the prisons in the northwest, wherever they are, that we're taking the same proactive approach to supporting and working with them. So.
Thank you very much for that answer, very comprehensive, and thank you. On page 32, on paragraph 37, it says that you have managed to secure 100 dedicated accommodation units. That sounds really quite impressive that you've managed to be able to do that. It'd be interesting to see how you do it. And whether it's right and proper to relate it to the graphs that are actually showing that over the last year there have been 200 young people who have eligible care leavers and care leavers allocated to personal advisors. So if you look at that graph, sorry, December 23, so it's 2 years, there's an increase of 200, which is quite considerable. So looking plans for going forward, if you've managed to secure 100, my first question is, that sounds really impressive, how have you done it? And secondly, what is your sufficiency plan going forward to find even more accommodation if the increase in numbers of young people needing that accommodation are in line with the 200 that I've mentioned in eligible care?
Thank you. That's a really good question. So yes, the 100 beds is really, really important. It makes a massive difference across the county. When I talked before about those partnerships with district and borough councils, with other agencies who support care leavers around accommodation, it's really important that we have a good amount of access to what we call HRS, or supported accommodation for care leavers, so those that need additional support have that support. But it's also, as you see, there's changes in demand in terms of the number of care leavers coming through the system, and that impacts on the level of demand on supported housing. Not every care leaver needs supported housing. Some go on to university, some go on to, or some remain with their foster carers. There's a lot of different options. And so one of the real challenges, and one of the things that we're working at within the Youth Homeless Prevention Action Plan and the updated sufficiency strategy for accommodation is really thinking about how we make sure that in our planning we've got enough supported accommodation. Some of that is about having the right amount of beds. Some of that is also about having the right partnerships and work to move care leavers through the system who are ready for independent living. And in a world where there's a lot of demand on housing in all sorts of areas, and people will be aware that places challenges in terms of the waiting lists for social housing, but also the cost and availability of private rent and good quality accommodation in Suffolk and nationally. We need to think about that, and we are going to have to think also about some really local specific challenges like Sizewell and the impact that will have on accommodation in that particular part of the county, for example. So it's always a work in progress when you're thinking about housing outcomes and improving housing for care leavers. The beds secured through the Staying Put programme and through the work from our colleagues in commissioning and the district and borough councils and everybody involved, and through the support and guidance of the Housing Board has been really, really important. But we also know it's not the end of the challenge, and that we have to really work hard to maintain and to make sure that we have the right types and numbers of accommodation available for care leavers in the county.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Another comprehensive reply, and thank you for that and for the hard work. So you did mention about staying put, and on page 42, paragraph 73, you got staying put. And you're saying here that the proportion, 6% remain with foster carers, staying put arrangement. It then goes on to say this number is below the council statistical neighbours. Then it goes on to say, to further promote staying put, talking with feedback from foster carers is regarding financial support. And my understanding is, obviously, if you have been a foster carer who are so valuable to this county and other counties, that when your young person becomes of the age that they would move on, that foster carer may continue to be a foster carer with all the support that comes around it. So do we know, if you're relating that to our statistical neighbours, are they doing something different to us? And I pick out the financial support because I expect that's one that's really crucial to staying put.
Thank you. So with staying put, I think one of the things that the statistics identifies is that we have fewer we're not as strong in staying put in Suffolk as some of our neighbours in terms of the numbers of foster carers who offer that beyond 18 to children in their care. We've looked long and hard about what some of the underpinning issues are. We've worked really closely with our foster carers, our fostering colleagues, and the Suffolk Foster Carers Association. And one of the things that we identified was that we were not in the same place as some of our neighbours in terms of the amounts of financial offer that we had and the way that our support was structured. And what that meant was that for some foster carers, they were in a position where they didn't necessarily feel able to offer staying put if they wanted to. We also identified that our staying put arrangements meant that for children who go on to university, who during the holidays might want to go back to their carers or spend time during the breaks, as any child at university should be able to. The way that our staying put arrangements were set up made that really difficult. And so in thinking about how we could promote staying put arrangements as a positive or an improved offer in Suffolk, we really reviewed in several areas. So the financial support was really important. It was really, loud and clear the foster carers were telling us that this was a big challenge for them. But also the role of the personal advisor and the way that it wasn't just about the amount of financial support, but it was about the way that it was managed was a challenge as well. And so we looked at that, looked at what other local authorities were doing where they had more success with staying put, and thought about how we could change our offer. I have to say that our offer in terms of university support is really strong locally and nationally, and we hope that in the future the figures will start to reflect that. Staying put's really important, not only because it's right that children who turn 18, if possible, shouldn't have to leave foster care arrangements, and that we know that evidence tells us that the longer they receive that care and support, the better the outcomes for care leavers. And so we know the evidence base is there to say that staying put has a really positive impact on outcomes for care leavers. And it's something that we want to really make sure that we promote and get right. I think it's also positive in terms of foster care retention. So whilst it might not seem that way if you're thinking you're taking foster carers out of offering younger children a home because they're looking after children for longer. Foster carers come into fostering because they want to care for children, provide good outcomes and support for them. And so anything we can do to enable foster carers to do right by the children that they care for and to be able to provide that support as they need them, I think is really important also in terms of future retention. So.
And if I just may have one last question, Chair, was some time ago it was discussed about a care leaver having a designated characteristic. Is that still something that's on the table? And if so, is it something that Suffolk is looking at?
So I think it's certainly something that is on the table from our perspective. It's something that we'd like to consider and continue to bring forward for discussion. It's not something that we've got to the point of progressing yet, and I think Councillor Bennett's going to add to that. But it's something we'd like to consider.
It's something I've talked to some of our care leavers and young people about, and we're happy to have conversations from time to time, and they have very mixed views on it, and I kind of feel that it's a decision that should be largely led by them. What they tell us strongly is that they they're adults. They are perfectly able of making their own decisions, and they don't like being done to. So any decision towards that has to be, led by them, driven by them, and with our full support.
Okay. Thank you. I believe, Jessica, you have another question? Dinesh?
Thank you. Yes, I'm afraid I do. I've got a couple. One is about the deep dive, which is described on page 35, which I'm not sure, I'm assuming that is not the same as the work that the committee's done behind the scenes. But according to the deep dive, a randomly sampled 20 care leavers were interviewed by telephone. Is that correct? It looks like it here. Anyway, and I'm just wondering whether you felt telephone was adequate, and whether you're planning to do any face-to-face meetings with care leavers. There's no indication, there's aged between 17 and 20, but presumably none over 20 were part of the deep dive. You can, confirming that as well. And if there are 654 care leavers currently, which page 39 states, is 20 out of 654 a representative sample? That's question number one.
Thank you for the question. So the deep dive relates to, so within the service we've benefited from really strong partnership and support from our quality assurance colleagues who've done a lot of work to try and help us understand whether we're making the progress we need to make, both in terms of practice, and so they will assess improvements in practice, but also how do you know if you don't ask the people that you support? Yeah, so that was it was a limited deep dive in terms of the scope, the number of children's circumstances or young adult circumstances that they assessed, and the scope within which they looked was 18 to 20. But I think in terms of broader feedback, we try and understand feedback from a variety of different sources. So whilst that was limited to 20, and I think given the scope of the work that they were trying to do, a judgment call was made that that making telephone calls was going to be sufficient, and it does appear to be sufficient in the response rate that they received. We use the survey and the annual survey, which is being undertaken at the moment, which received over 120 responses last time around, which provides a much more representative sample and is self-reported through a Microsoft form, if you like. But also now we've integrated feedback throughout the pathway plan reviewing, so we do seek the feedback and comments of our care leavers every time their pathway plan is reviewed, which is at least every 6 months, and that gives us an indication not only of numerically, statistically on a data basis where they see services, but they also tell us what they think, what they need, what we can do to make a difference, and that's really helped us both in terms of understanding what services and support they still feel they need assistance with, but it also helps us to understand how they experience the service from their personal advisor, and some have given some really positive feedback about the help that their personal advisors give them and how invaluable that is. When we undertake the annual review, once we close it this year, we'll be reviewing, and our aim is to get at least 120 plus responses, which is a high number in terms of survey type approaches, but also within the survey itself there's a mixture of qualitative and quantitative questions. Those that give feedback about really significant difficulties will be invited to speak with one of the leaving care staff, one of the management group, not someone who's within the management group that is supporting them, so that there's some follow-up for them, so that we're hearing their voices as well. So we have to look at a lot of different ranges of things. The deep dive itself was what we would call primarily an audit piece of work, so it was looking at practice and records and quality of assessments and areas like that, but also outcomes in terms of what young people were telling us and what we could see from the support they received. So that's why it was probably more limited in scope.
Okay.
Thank you. I believe Robbie wants to come in.
Yeah, I do, and I think Hayley wants to say some things too. And what I want to say is, when it comes to quality assurance, it's something that we've strengthened across the whole of CYP, from SEND to care leavers and social work. Our quality assurance is dramatically changed. It's a real core part of the whole transformation journey that CYP is on. And part of that sort of random dip sampling, deep dive is really important part of that. And it's very similar to what Ofsted do when they come in. So there's lots of reasons for doing it, but it's not the only way, as Andrew's saying, that we hear that voice. And when you read on to the next paragraph 57, the Chat to Change Council, the Children in Care Council, that's another really important way we hear that voice. But I think, Hayley, you want to say a bit more, don't you?
Thank you, but I think you probably just said quite a lot for me, so that's... No, it's really good, it's really good. It's really just to add that on top of those 20 children, we've actually just started another piece of feedback focus as well, young people. So that's just started this week, so we are repeating that exercise, because we know 20 is not enough, and it's doing it really regularly on top of the other things that both Bobby and Andrew have spoken about.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I just personally feel it's so important to have that feedback from as many as possible, and to have it. I noticed that the recommendations described in our papers are mostly appreciating the service that they get, but I don't see a description of feedback in terms of how the service could be improved in our papers. There may be some coming in, I don't know, but it'd be helpful for us to understand, what those young people who are in a very tricky part of their lives, obviously, how they think we can help them more, and what some of their problems are, even if we can't help them, because sometimes, the county council may not be able to help them, but there are other ways they can be helped that we can expand out of, so to speak. So I just think it'd be really nice, maybe as a recommendation, to expand on that topic of feedback from the young people, so that there's a close feeling of engagement. I have another question, and it's on rurality. There's a sort of underlying thread in our paper that most of the care livers are in Ipswich or in an urban area. Is there a geographic spread that you can just describe to give a picture of Suffolk as a whole, rather than the main urban centre? And how are care leavers in rural settings managing?
Thank you. So without the specific data to hand, I can try and give a verbal explanation of that picture. So one of the things that we see is there is a larger concentration of care leavers in Ipswich, as it's the biggest urban area. I think the reasons for that are a few different things. So one of them is the amount of and location of supported accommodation being in urban areas, and with Ipswich being the biggest urban area, often as care leavers progress through the housing process, they are in Ipswich or some of the other urban areas. So we've got supported accommodation in Lowestoft, in Stowmarket, in other towns across the county. But also it relates to education and training and college and the same things that other children travel to the towns for. It's that they often, our care leavers need to be in situ to be able to access those things, and so they're perhaps more likely to live in urban areas than our younger children in foster care who live in fostering homes, which can be really spread across the county. I think so care leavers living in rural areas is a real challenge in terms of how we support them. It's one of the things that certainly the family business and some of the work we're doing around promoting apprenticeships and employment for care leavers is really drilling into, because if you, for example, get a job in a rural location, or you live in a rural location and you're 18, how do you get there? How do you fulfill the opportunity?
That's a problem for everyone, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a huge challenge, and so some of the work we're doing is looking at how we can create accommodation options which are closer to training centres and education centres, so that care leavers in the west and the north of the county can benefit in the same way from the Skills Academy and the family business support, and also from accessing colleges and other centres. But it is a challenge and a reality. In terms of, I don't have the actual spread across the county, but largely speaking, care leavers live and are concentrated within the urban centres so in the south of the county, which is Ipswich area and surrounding, We have a lot in Stowmarket, and Haverhill as well is an area, and Lowestoft and the surrounding areas of Lowestoft as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ash is next, I believe, and then who else wanted to go? Camilla? Yeah, Ash first.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I go into any questions, I just wanted to briefly just reiterate what you said at the beginning, Keith, regarding my visit, because obviously some of the questions that come out of that visit with the care leavers teams and the UASC unaccompanied asylum seeker children. I know referred to now within these papers as separated migrant children, but I believe the team still go under the UASC term as it stands. That's what they. It was just really, they were really open, really welcoming. It was just wonderful to see the passion they have for their work, and they just carried on as normal as if I wasn't there, which is what you want. And it was just really good to see how caring they were and how driven they were. I mean, just an example of the caseload. I asked about that. Obviously, caseload to come down. So some of them were complaining that they've got nothing to do in the evenings now, sort of thing. But because they care that much about children, rather than wanting to work, they are very, very, I'd say that as a joke. I don't want to. If they're watching, I'll be in trouble, won't I? But yeah, no, just really wanted to big them up, and I'm doing that because I wanted to do it, not because I promised them that I'd do it. But yeah, it was a really interesting and really productive meeting. I just wanted to have just a few kind of challenges or concerns that I picked up from those conversations, if I may. I'll just take them in kind of the order I scribbled them down today. I mean, I initially just around the kind of that communication of the leaving care offer to the young people. I know it's talked about here in the pack. It's developed really well. They were creating a newsletter as I was there. They didn't bring that because I was there. They promised me they were doing it anyway. But they've created a newsletter. This newsletter will have the leaving care QR code on the bottom of it. That'll get WhatsApped and shared out to all of the young people. One thing around that they found is within the care offer and some of the feedback with the care offer is they found that sometimes the communication with external organisations, I don't really know how it kind of came to be, but it's essentially sometimes external organisations, through no fault of their own probably, just through kind of conversations with the department, etc., kind of almost would tell young people that there was things in the leaving care offer that aren't actually in the offer yet, and it would cause some miscommunication. So it's just, I think they just around that kind of passing the care offer around to those organisations that we work with, just to ensure that they're aware of what's in there. It wasn't a criticism of anyone. I think this is, you have conversations. The one that came up was conversations, I think it's been raised in a meeting at some point, maybe doing something about reduced cost of driving lessons for care leavers. And then that's somehow then got to someone who's then said it's actually in there, and they've told a young person, and it gets. So I think that's just a kind of a communication thing. That was, and I think what they're doing about getting the care offer out to young people was really good. I also, on one of the meetings, I kind of gate crashed a presentation they had from the family group conferencing team, the lifelong links. So the person came and did that speech. So I noticed you've got your stickers on your laptops there. So that was really good. So whether there's anything we want to just bring up now about that, please feel free to before I go any further, if you for the benefit of everyone else here, because I know it's quite a new scheme.
Yeah. So on both of those. First of all, just to say, yeah, I think you make a really good point about, so we put a lot of focus in making sure that that care leavers know about the local offer, can access the local offer, can see it, can understand it, and how we assure ourselves of that. And I think we know we need to keep up with making sure that partner agencies have that, because there's so many, across the county, there's so many different organisations that will touch on that support with care leavers. And in some areas of the county, for example, if you went to West Suffolk College, they'll be supporting care leavers from Suffolk, but also from Cambridgeshire and other counties. And each local offer is different. And so what that can lead to is misunderstandings about what is in the Suffolk offer against what might be in other offers. And so really making sure that we do that piece of work. Partners is important because, yeah, for care leavers involved, these are big issues and big ticket things. Speaking to the point around care leavers living in rural locations and us being a rural county, things like driving and support for driving can be really important topics for them. In terms of lifelong links, so as part of the Families First transformation, Suffolk, like everywhere, is having a real focus on expanding family group conferencing, and lifelong links follows, I guess, alongside that. It's I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. So one of the things that the care review identified was that for too many care leavers, they will leave care with too few, sometimes no, long-standing relationships, people that care for them. So the system for too many will mean that they lose contact with people that have looked after them, people that have meant something to them, and that can be through having to move, that can be through having to experience change, or through some of the instability in their lives. So Lifelong Links is it's a national initiative, but it looks at how you can connect people in the care system with people that they've known before. So that could be a friend from your class in your primary school that you lost touch with because you moved from Bury to Ipswich because of, you know, a change in your circumstances. Could be about a foster carer that someone used to live with several years ago but haven't been able to keep in touch with. It can also be family members. So for some children in the care system, for one reason or another, they might not have those relationships with distant family members, but actually those family members, if they could, would love to be able to have that relationship and connection with them. So it can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different children. And if you sort of look up lifelong links, you'll see examples of where it's helped to reconnect care experienced people with networks, with people, with individuals that they've previously known. So lifelong links is a lot of the approach comes from the same place as the family group conferencing, which is something we're expanding and really rolling out in Suffolk at the moment. And so the opportunity with lifelong links is for us to think about how we utilise the structures, the thinking, the passion, the understanding of the family group conferencing model to now also look at whether and how we can look at that point around every care leaver having, I think the aspiration is every care leaver to have at least two loving relationships when they leave care, and lifelong links is inextricably linked to how that can be achieved.
I think maybe through the chair, maybe that's something we can kind of get those links shared out to the members, you know, for the future, because I think it was quite an interesting presentation. Just a couple more that came out. There was obviously there's a lot of it in here about mental health of young people, as there is, you know, across the board. There seemed to be a little bit concern about the loss of the support in the mental health space. There was like an individual who wasn't going to be kind of given the kind of direct support to care leavers. So it was just about what support is going to be out there, you know, like for care leavers themselves, you know, to kind of access kind of mental health signposting, such as the police.
So access to mental health support for care leavers is a big challenge. I think if coming back to the point around feedback we get and what young people tell us needs to improve, access to housing, access to mental health are two big national challenges when it comes to the support that care experienced people need. I think that, you know, having tailored, so if you were meeting with our colleagues in the US team, having that tailored specific support which looks at their experiences, often these will be young people fleeing experiences of trauma, conflict, family fragmentation, all sorts of really complicated challenges. Having that access to support and tailored support is there. It is a challenge. You know, we've got to be honest that making sure we've got the right support and can meet the need out there is a real challenge. And again, that's a local and a national issue. Some of what we do is about making sure that we're advocating for the services that we need for them. Some of it's about how we connect them with the services they need as well and the services out there. And so whilst we are going through a period of uncertainty in terms of the support that young people will be able to receive, I think we want to use it as an opportunity to make sure that as we move forwards, care leavers and access to mental health support is equitable across from children in care and from the child space into the young adult space as well.
Thank you. I believe, Bobby, would you like to come in?
So this is strategically a really important space for partnership working, and we have representatives from the NSFT and from the ICB that sit on all of our partnership boards, whether that's Corporate Parenting, Strategic Alliance, Safe Strong Communities Board, Strengthening Services Board, too many boards, and those conversations are happening at every level. But you know, clearly with what the ICB is going through with the changes and working with them, the NSFT is really strong in this. It's really important in this space. Hayley, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. It was really just to add on top of what both Councillor Bennett and Andrew have said. I've actually got a meeting with the ICB this afternoon to talk about mental health services, and particularly for children and young people who are experiencing trauma, because we do recognise it's a gap between us all. So that's the beginning of thinking about how we can do something differently. And actually, we also had a conversation in our meeting this week, didn't we, Andrew? With our commissioners about what we could do differently as well, and we've got it's coming to our leadership team on Monday to have that conversation as well. So it's a really live issue for us, and just both some reassurance that we are trying to get on top of it with our ICB colleagues.
Thank you.
Just one final thing. We're just going page 33, paragraph 48, around recruitment and obviously the transformation programme that's been discussed, we're entering, was just, as you can expect from any restructuring, there was obviously some kind of concerns around like what that might mean on the ground level for, you know, for the teams, as you can, I'm sure you can imagine, and what, you know, so just maybe, if possible, to give any kind of more expansion and reassurances, if at this point, if that's, you know, if you can.
I'll let Hayley do that, but just to be aware, we still are in consultation, so we're very limited about what we can say.
I appreciate that, and it was just because obviously it came. I'm just going, you know, I don't expect, you know, I know it's live, so I, you know, just wanted to raise it.
So I think, as I've said in the report, what we've set out is you know, maintaining the investment that we've had in personal advisors, which has been crucial, both in terms of the leaving care teams and also the US team, the team that you spoke to. So I think, yeah, whilst we are limited in what we can say, I think just you know, restating that in terms of the investment and the support that we've required and utilised to get this far, I think, as everyone can see from the report, it wouldn't be useful to walk away from that. So we can say that much. Hayley, is there anything you want to add in terms of that?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just to say, you know, we recognise these are hard jobs. We are listening to what our staff are saying, like we say, we're in the middle of a consultation, but you know, it's really important to us that we stay really close to our practitioners, that they're able to talk to us and we understand what's going on, and that we make the jobs, you know, enjoyable and doable And of course, that increase in capacity that we've seen over the last year or so is making a difference. And what we haven't said, it's related kind of, we haven't really said, but all of our 17-year-old children who are in care now have a PA as well, which that's what we've been able to do with that increase in investment. So just to say that as well.
Thank you. We have Camilla next, then we have Ruth's debut question. So, Camilla.
Thank you. So on page 44.90 mentions neat care leavers with an EHCP. So I have two questions about that. Firstly, do you keep separate statistics on, so if we go back a couple of pages to the statistics, do you have that information specifically for children with EHCPs and young people? Because it would be interesting to know if they're disproportionately represented in some of those areas. And the second part of the question is just, as it says, it's been identified as a priority area for this year, to hear a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Yes, in short, the statistics are kept separately, and having an education healthcare plan as a care leaver is a protective factor in that the statistics for those that are in employment, education and training are higher. So it is positive. The work is at an operational level very focused on the transition from statutory school age to college and then beyond is focused on more intensively. And so the work in the virtual school looking at how viable the post-16 destination is according to their education healthcare plan is given a lot of due diligence looking at testing that, supporting our colleagues in SEND statutory services around that consultation, linking two parts of the system, social care and education together, and also working with our settings so that they are able to, I think, know fully that they're able to meet those needs. Also, in terms of our employers as well, having an understanding of what might be required and the reasonable allowances that might be needed in that element. So they are a cohort within a cohort, having an education healthcare plan or having an aspect of SEND support, and also very focused on the primary need that they might have. So whether that's social, emotional, mental health, or whether that's cognition and learning, that also has a bearing on what kind of offer we might have for them. So those statistics are held separately, monitored carefully. The SEND operational dashboard also looks separately at all aspects of social care involvement, including care leavers. So currently don't have any care leavers who have an overdue assessment, and those that have an overdue annual review are focused and specifically looked at there, and we've got to focus on that recovery work. So yeah, they are seen separately and monitored carefully.
Thank you. Ruth.
Thank you very much. Camilla, you've just asked the question that I spent 20 minutes writing down. So I can only take it as validation that it was a good question. Perhaps I can add on to that, though, is that my understanding within the context of the new government white paper on educational reform, perhaps EHCPs will be allocated differently. Have you thought going forwards, I know it's only in the future, a few years ahead, but have you thought how you can maintain the same standard of excellence in making sure children who have similar needs are identified even though they may not have an EHCP? Thank you.
Yeah, obviously very live and hot off the press, but it has been a focus. Very focused on what the ISP, the individual support plan, will be and how that will dovetail into the personal education plan, which all children in care have. And I think there's real opportunities to look at that. Too early to say how it will apply, but we are well connected with DFE colleagues. There is a National Association for Virtual School Heads that's looking to gain those assurances that that's being considered. The white paper doesn't specifically mention children in care, doesn't specifically mention virtual school heads, but I know that Josh McAllister in the kind of in the presentation of it was talking about how closely the reforms are linked with the social care reforms, and so we expect there to be real thought around how those two things will dovetail. And we'll watch that space, but I think the key to it will be gaining the advantage of every child in care having a personal education plan, and that being able to link in with an ISP when that change comes.
Jane?
Thank you, Chair, and absolutely, and just to follow on from what Matthew said, so as a systems leader, all of this legislation which is coming at us in different directions, it all knits together really nicely. So Families First, Best Start in Life hubs, thinking about the white paper, the SEND reforms, just as Matthew has highlighted, it's a real opportunity for us to think of all of our children and think of the fact that we can't think about children in silos, we've got to think about what's our approach. So we really welcome this. Really early days, we're in briefings continuously around what these things might mean, but there's so many opportunities. And the team here are just so on their toes thinking, this is great because it could link into this and different things. So really welcome the questions. It's good.
Thank you very much. Ash?
Just an additional one, because I always forget something, don't I? It was around, again, going back to kind of unsuitable accommodation and housing. Is there more of a risk around that, or more of a challenge around that concerning separated migrant children? And could you develop on that, please?
So they were overrepresented when issues were identified. At present, that link is less strong because we've made significant headway in reducing the number of care leavers in unsuitable accommodation in the Ipswich area, and so the progress we've made has helped to address that particular challenge. I think so at this stage, I think we've managed to make a lot of headway in terms of that. It's there's still work to do to try and make sure that they're able to access opportunities across the county, and that will help to reduce the potential for there being a pinch point again. But in general, I think the work that we've done to really improve the situation in the Ipswich areas and the partnership work with the Borough Council there to do that has really helped.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, just one last one from me. I have to be careful how I word this. Recently, a community trust went into administration in Lowestoft. First of all, thank you to the county officers who stepped in and supported it. I just wondered if any of our care leavers were affected by that, and there is going to be an investigation into it, so I can't say now what can we do about preventing it in the future, but it's just being alert to an external provider suddenly dropping us in it, and really, were we affected? And even if we were affected, weren't. I know that we stepped in. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Jane, I believe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. I'll purposefully answer it because just to reassure everybody that if our care leavers were involved, we absolutely have made sure that we're in that space. And if there were care leavers involved, we would know them individually and be supporting that plan. Just because we're in a public forum, it's hard to say any more than that, but we have really good eyes on all of those situations, good scrutiny from Councillor Bennett, as you would expect always. But I think the question really allows us to think about that wider sufficiency piece, because that's really where we need to focus. And as Andrew has really talked about, that additional capacity that we found with sufficiency over the year, and our ambition to keep going more and more with that is really underlined in that space. But more than happy to have a conversation.
Thank you. James?
Yes, thank you very much. I've left this personally to the end because, or towards the end, I trust. But I think it's really important to recognise the work of the virtual school and virtual college that has been written in this report. And this may be well outside the scope of this scrutiny, but the virtual school, as I understand it, or virtual college, however we would like to term it, is there to support young people who have had a difficult start, if I can put it that way, and those have been identified people, children who've been in care. Do you think there's something that we could learn from the virtual school, virtual college, to help young people within education who are not care leaver, a part of the care system or in care, to help those children who may have had adverse childhood experiences at an early stage, and is there a model that we could use of it? Thank you.
Chair, if I could ask Sharon to pick this up and talk about our work with vulnerable learners.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So we have a great virtual school, but we also have many of the practitioners across the education service that work with our children in education who need support. And Matthew and the team work alongside that group of heads of service and the officers within those services. Certainly over the last 10 months we've done a lot of work about looking about who are the children that are currently in the virtual school, but also what has their experience prior to arrival in care been, and what could we do further down the system to support those vulnerable learners. So the energy, if you like, is across, and that's already happening through kind of peer-led groups across the heads of service. As a department, we, since September, have had quite a lot of focus on children not in school and education, because we know that that's obviously a protective factor, and we've talked about NEET and ongoing issues that may occur for children if they're not in school. So that as a strategic thrust has been in place across the department. Matthew and the team are linked to that, but as I've said, also looking at all the way through to early years, so think about best start in life, where are little ones accessing that early years provision? If they're not, why not? How can we help them? How can we work with them? Also thinking across into that transition into early years to primary and from primary to secondary, because we often see that those are points where things may go wrong and may need additional support for children and families. So the SEND reform agenda links into that as well. We finally had a session on the 30th of January, Belonging and Inclusion Conference, which I'm going to pass, rather than steal colleagues' thunder, I'll pass over to Julia, because Julia did an awful lot of planning work in that space.
Thank you, thanks. I think also just important to reiterate the learning that we share across our heads of service the whole time. So Matthew, as the head of the virtual school, is a key member of our education and inclusion leadership team, and we're constantly sharing what is it we're doing with schools, with settings, with children, with families that's making a difference. How can we share the learning from that wider, and how can we build on it across our different teams too. But in terms of the Belonging and Inclusion Conference at the end of January, we had over 250 people attend an event at Trinity Park, which we planned with parents, with carers, with heads of service, with health colleagues across the local area partnership. The intention of it was to bring us all together around what are those things that we're doing currently that lead to children and families feel that real sense of belonging and have provision in place that supports meeting their needs, achieving well, thriving, feeling safe, feeling happy. And we had input from head teachers from across Suffolk, but also from across the country who came to share their practice. We had children and young people coming in person to share how they feel and the things that help them feel that sense of belonging and then to learn well. And we also had workshops in the afternoon where we came together around different themes to say what's working well now, but what do we need to do differently together. That work alongside a group that have met of health colleagues, colleagues from children and young people services, parents, carers, school leaders, CEOs from multi-academy trusts. We're bringing together both of those aspects to form our belonging and inclusion strategy,
which will say what are the things we're doing together and what are the things we need to do differently together, so that that experience that you talk about, which is really positive for some children, is expanded wider for more children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, I've got nobody else on my list to speak. I will say that there's been some very searching questions and some very well-considered answers at today's meeting. Bobby, do you have any closing comments you would like to make?
Okay, thank you. We've covered an awful lot of ground today. It's an incredibly good paper. Thank you, Andrew and team, for putting it together, and thank you everyone for the work that has been happening in this space since Ofsted came to see us in 2024. So some of the things we've touched on, how we've tripled the number of times that we're actively reaching out to offer support to our young people, the additional investment we put in to recruit more personal advisors so they have manageable caseloads and can reach more people. And we talked about the importance of PAs to our young people and how we're supporting our PAs via our development programme as well. We touched a little bit on how we make sure we hear their care leaver voice and their views. And I know that that's something that we talk a lot about at the Corporate Parenting Board, but that is really important. And we've talked through the work we've done to reduce the number of care leavers in unsuitable accommodation, particularly about our work with partners such as district and boroughs to support care leavers with regard to housing and the work to increase the numbers of dedicated accommodation units. We did talk quite a lot about the work we're doing to support those in custody, making sure that they get the right access to the help they need, that they're visited and supported, and the partnership working in this space, particularly with the police, probation, district and boroughs, to make sure that when they do leave custody, that they've got a good plan in place to support them in life outside. We talked about the reviewing of our staying put policy and some of the challenges we faced in making the changes to that policy, and the importance of quality assurance, not just in this space but across CYP, and how we've increased it and how that works with regard to care leavers. Mental health, a very live issue, as the team have said, actively working with health partners to see what can be done differently. And we've touched on the work of the virtual school, how we support care leavers with additional needs through education, employment training, and maybe identified a future scrutiny on vulnerable learners and the virtual school. Who knows? That's up for the next administration. But I think lastly I want to say is this will be my last time in front of you before the election, and I want to take the opportunity to thank CYP staff, not just the senior staff that we have here today and have at the previous committee, but also all the way down through the department to the frontline staff who are out every day working with our families and children. And actually I would like to thank you as a committee as well for the challenge and sort of in-depth scrutiny that you give us each time, and the work that you do through your recommendations to help improve the work that CYP does. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I will now ask for recommendations. I'm not averse to recommendations from the other side as well. Anything we can do to constructively help moving forward is good. Okay, can I ask for recommendations, Ashley?
Yeah, I've been holding this back for this point. I think it's relevant here. It was about just some conversations, the work that in the meetings that they do just to kind of find activities for young people to do, and the way that they spend their budgets, they have budgets, but they're obviously all limited. And now I appreciate when we talk about more money for things, that's not necessarily always possible across the board. We understand that. We know what situation we're in. It was more about those links with other organisations and maybe how we can kind of, because they was like, oh, I've got a nephew who runs this church who might be able to lend us the hall for a bit. Or, yeah, I know someone at the, here. And that's wonderful and that's brilliant. That's excellent. It shows that we're embedded in the community. But I wondered whether we as a council could do more in that space to kind of have some more kind of direct links. I mean, you were saying about with the voucher as well for the schools, whether there's like certain, I know Timpson's nationwide do things, don't they, for like dry cleaning if you haven't got, if you're seeking job seekers and that. So I just wonder whether there was ways we could as a council work in that space and locality budgets, etc., like that, and whether that could be a recommendation.
That's more of a question than a recommendation.
Well, it's a question, I don't know what it is.
Bobby?
I think there is a recommendation in there, but I just wanted to sort of tongue-in-cheek acknowledge how thrilled the engagement hub were when they found out that the councillor sitting opposite had some very strong experience with skateboarding, and they're planning to utilise that. But it's finding those opportunities to sort of do more. I don't know what the recommendation might be, but I'm sure we can think of one.
Okay, thank you. And any others? So, Michael?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The point I made, I think, is about the personal developers development programme, which I would like to have a recommendation, perhaps that they continue to evaluate the personal advisor development programme and to make changes to continually meet the needs of those attending.
Thank you. James, I knew you'd have one.
Well, I must admit I am looking for one, and it's always good to have a recommendation that officers can say, well, we're doing that anyhow, so that's fine. So really on the sufficiency plan is ensuring that the accommodation, which we know, and I'm sure everybody agrees is so important, having suitable accommodation, is making sure that that is within the sufficiency plan. I know it will be, but yeah, it, is an opportunity just to highlight it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica, you want to speak? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think any recommendation I'd like to make is around trying to extend the concept of the lifeline links to try to increase the permanent relationships that these young people can establish with other people in the community, perhaps potential employers, educationalists, people who can benefit them in more of a long-term fashion, but maybe trying to find people from, potential, I don't know, businesses, and just extend the type of linkages that we can establish as the people move into the real world, and maybe start these relationships quite young. I just want to say, when I was in America, there was a brothers and sisters program that sort of was not that dissimilar from thing. I was actually a big sister when I was working there, and I formed a linkage with a young person who was struggling and brought them into my office, gave them some work experience, and the relationship lasted for years, and it was just a really good thing. I'm not sure whether those kind of things could be developed more here, but if they can, it'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, it just strikes me that one of the things we've been really remiss about talking today is the family business and the brilliant work that does, and I wonder if that's something that might fit in that space. I don't know whether we've talked about the family business in this space before, but that's the work we do, supporting care leavers into jobs, and we have apprenticeships here, we have apprenticeships at businesses across Suffolk. Really important piece of what we've been doing. If you don't know about it, I've got lots of people, including myself, who are happy to talk about it for a long time, but do look on the website.
Thank you. I'm sure we can sort some bits and pieces out of that lot. Ashley?
Just one. I think it's just, again, it's already in there. I know you do, but I think it's just like I think we just always need to reiterate that obviously this, what happens here needs to be for the young people, by the young people, and just kind of really maintaining those really strong levels of communication and feedback, both ways, that full loop, and obviously what's happening with the corporate preparing board is a really positive step in that space. But I think just reiterating that within a recommendation would be positive.
The officers and staff for their efforts and their continuing efforts to do their job and do the best for the young people. We all admire that. Thank you. I think we've got most of what we need. Hang on. Peter?
It was really only to reiterate what Ash said about the engagement groups we got. We're talking on page 35, talks about C2C, the Children in Care Council, trying to make sure that what they're doing really does celebrate the success of what is being provided by the county. I don't know whether it's rather whether do they need more funding or whether what we've got here. We've got a statement here about it anyway, but it's actually really flagging up big time that what's being done successfully in the background to support our care leavers and beyond. And also what I think Jessica, so James raised as well, Matthew, about the virtual school. How wide can we make that, giving not just for this, but for special needs and broader, and especially once we start getting a grip on the new white paper and what we can do with that. But I think what we've got contained in here, it's so wide-ranging, so detailed. Part of it is just to say, carry on, you know. Thank you.
Thank you. I think everybody's happy at that stage. What I'm going to do now, just somebody made me 2 cups of tea before we came in here. I'm going to call a 10-minute break before we go into the information bulletin, and thank everybody for coming, the officers and staff. And as I say, it's the last CYP meeting scrutiny we have. I'd like to thank everybody for their efforts on both sides of the chamber. You've been very cooperative, very helpful, and the questions have been of a high standard. So, thank you.
Can I just, before you do break, come to break, whilst officers are here, just on the information bulletin, on the 1.1 report where it says Suffolk Local off the website, you can click onto there and then go through, as we imagine I did, move on to news and then to governance, and then on to governance, and then on to the recruitment board, and you click on the files, they don't link it. So if somebody could have a look at that for me, please. Thank you. I'd imagine I'm one of only a few people who's tried to look at it.
Thank you. And it was James that made me 2 cups of tea, hence we've got to have a break. All right, thank you. Welcome back, everybody. We now go on to item 6, the information bulletin. Please note the information bulletin is on pages 47 to 52 as set out in the agenda. The information bulletin allows the committee to request information without the need for a full scrutiny report on the agenda, which helps to keep meetings manageable and focused on our chosen scrutiny topics. Any questions on the content of the information bulletin should be raised with the officer contact set out in the end of each item. If members have concerns arising from the information which they feel the committee should look into further, please raise these under agenda item 7 forward work programme. Do we have any comments on that? Okay, so everybody's happy with the information bulletin. Okay, we'll now move on to the forward work programme. The committee is asked to put forward suggestions for the forward work programme set out on pages 53 to 55 as set out on the agenda. The next meeting for this committee is scheduled for the 18th of June 2026. I'm nearly 100 years old. And it is proposed for the meeting that the committee should receive presentation from the CYP Directorate on the current priorities and challenges for 26-27, 27-28. Subsequent meeting dates are listed on the forward work programme for the committee's information. Are there any topics members wish to propose for the forward work programme or request for information bulletin items? When suggesting, we cannot dictate to the next Children's Services Committee what they study. All we can do is give them ideas and options. So, do we have anything you'd like to put forward?
Thank you, Chair. And just to reiterate what was said earlier by others, this may well be the last drink at the saloon for some of us. It may not be. It's been a pleasure in my short period to serve under your leadership and to work with colleagues here. And it's always a pleasure to be in an apolitical environment. I really do enjoy that. That's why it works. I'm concerned because we still don't know what shape the new county or unitaries are going to be. So should we be recommending that in the next administration they look at whatever is proposed? If it's a single unitary, then it will be obviously not a problem. Having listened to officers here and the intensity that goes on with our single management of education across Suffolk, how that's going to break down into 3, if it is 3, and whether they will need to be looking within that period. We know it's not happening yet, but surely it would be wise for a new scrutiny committee, if it's 3 unitaries, to at some point, perhaps in the next 6 months, once they've started talking, it would be totally unnecessary if it's a single authority, but obviously you must have that in mind anyway. Can we perhaps suggest that? I mean, I'm sure they've thought about it anyway. It's been thought about. Bobby, thank you.
I think even if, not knowing what a unitary Suffolk will look like, I think there's still some really important conversations to have about how services that are currently held with district and boroughs will join up, and I think there's a useful conversation to have about that as a unitary, particularly in something like care leavers, where we hope we will have more levers to pull, and that will be a thing, but I think there's a conversation to be had about that.
I mean, I'm concerned because if
we should have some more idea what's going on the next 3 weeks.
I think whatever, but also, I mean, I share the concern about how it's going to work. We're going to have, if it's even it's going to be a single authority, everything's coming into one again, whatever. So whatever's being done by the districts, and it does. I agree, Bobby. Whatever happens, but this is a crucial thing for the children of this authority. Whatever happens, and whether we just, I think any new authority would be very silly not to look at that before it all comes into place. It's 2028, isn't it, when it's finally decided? So it may well need to come 2 or 3 times, and whatever they propose might need to come back here and be looked at. But that's my proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, Sarah Jane.
Thank you, Chair. And just As Director of Children's Services, what I do know for certain is that Suffolk County Council continues until the end of March 2028, and as such, we are inspected, quite rightly, as a Children's Services until that point. And the work of the Scrutiny Committee is so helpful in helping us make, it's an extra scrutiny on that really important work. So I hear what you're saying, but the work plan we have will need to still do what we're doing as well. We need to do both things.
And just to reiterate that, remind me, I think it's 5 inspections the authority is expecting. Potentially 7 between now and then.
Thank you. Anybody else? No, so we've got a range of topics on the forward plan. As I say, we're not in a position to dictate which topics the next scrutiny committee takes forward or when they scrutinise them. I mean, obviously we recommend that SEND, etc. is done on a regular basis. So to be fair, I think all we can do is leave them these recommendations and, as I say, make up their own minds. They'll have that introductory meeting in July, for which will be a learning experience for both sides, and they can thrash out the way forward. And we'll know more about the way things are going forward at that time. Until that time, we're sort of playing a bit of a guessing game. So I would recommend go with what we got, present it to them, let them take the pick, and they can form a new idea in July. If everybody's happy with that. And in that case, what can I say? Well, yeah, go home. Yeah. and thank you very much, everybody. It's been a pleasure for me the last 18 months or so. So, good questions, good answers, good committee.
Could I just extend that to the officers and Helen and Susan, who have obviously kept you under control, Chair?
The trouble is, democratic services, they're so good, we just take it for granted.